Greetings and welcome to Parsing, John. I have no idea what part this is, except to say that this is probably part 5 of Latin. Today we're going to be taking a look at verses 8 and 9 of John chapter 1. We, in our previous Latin video, went through verses 6 and 7. We've got our rubric right here. You should take a moment to refresh your memory of all the different parts of speech that we're looking for. Put that off to the side. So, what we want to do first is we want to read the text aloud. Non erat ille lux, sed ut testimonium perhiberet de lumine. Erat lux vera quae illuminat omnem hominem venientem in mundum. Okay, so far the text. Very first thing we want to do whenever translating from Latin and English is we want to find a verb. Non is not a verb, but it's a pretty easy word to handle. Nothing special really about it, just not. Okay, erat here is a verb. As we take a look at the previous work we've done, we see we have erat here already parsed, so I don't need to do it again. I can just pull the translation down. Not was. We know we need a singular subject, so we look ahead. We've got ille as the very next word, and ille is a masculine singular nominative form of a demonstrative. So that one's probably going to be our subject. It's looking next to it. We've also got another word that could be nominative if it is masculine or feminine. But since this is the first nominative, this one is going to be the subject, and lux here, since we've got a linking verb, is actually going to be the predicate. And it can only be the predicate because it's not neuter, therefore can't be accusative. This word is actually feminine, so we got nominative, singular, feminine. This one means that. For English sakes, we're going to throw in the word one. We don't have an actual noun for ille to be pointing towards, so in English we have to insert a word to add clarity. This is quite normal. Lux means light, as in light from a star or something like that. So far then we have that one was not light. Okay, so grammar works all there. But who is this that one? Well, as discussed in our previous video, ille is a demonstrative that points to the former of two objects. As we look through our previous passages, the two objects that we could have a problem figuring out which is which is lumine and homo. Homo is masculine, ille is masculine, and ille refers to the former. The former would be homo, the latter would be lumine. So these two clearly go together. So we know that one is the man. What man? John. Light. Light is something that was talked about in verse 5 and before. And here we have an interesting situation where the translator from the Greek into Latin has returned to the previous word he used in verse 5 for light, lux, whereas in verse 7 he used lumine, and he's going to use it again right there. Now this one, as I said in our previous video, this one means something along the lines of light coming from a star or a heavenly body, whereas lumine means a source of light, or light from a torch, or it could just mean plain old light. This one could also just mean plain light. But we're going to keep them separate in their translations. So write this same down here when we get to it. Okay, said. Moving on, we've got but. Now we've got ut, another ut in here, so we could have a subjunctive phrase. We'd take a look at a verb. We've got perhiberet, which is a repetition of this word right here. Exact same thing. We don't need to parse it. Just write an arrow to it. And this tells us that this ut is also introducing a purpose clause. Perp. In order. Since we had a purpose clause here with this verb, and we have the exact same verb in another purpose clause, it makes sense to use our same word as to rather than that as we did right there. Okay, in order to hold what? Why, the same object as the first purpose clause that we had in this paragraph. So I'm just going to draw this down here again. No need to parse it. I already have it parsed right there. It's the same in all three instances. Just being used in different clauses. All right, in order to hold witness. And we've got a prepositional phrase finishing this verse off. We already have seen this prepositional phrase before, so we don't need to write anything new about it. We just need to pull that same information down to it. About source of light. Again, keeping lumine separate in its meaning from lux because they are two completely different words. Okay, so that's verse 8. That one was not light, but in order to hold witness about light. Now that there, we have a confusing phrase, but in order to hold witness about the source of light. This doesn't really seem to follow with the rest of the sentence that we've got here. And one thing that we can do with this subordinate clause here is we can take a look at what's come before. The context can tell us if there's anything that we can legally, if you will, add in to give clarity on what's going on. Well, taking a look at what has happened before, we see that the first time where this same purpose clause showed up, we have the main clause before it, hic venit in testimonium. This one came for a witness in order to hold a witness about the source of light. So when we have a repetition of a clause in a later portion of the paragraph, one thing that we can do for less poor, ignorant English readers is we can take elements of the first time that this clause appeared and we can bring them in and repeat them to give the same clarity that they had from before. Now, if you were reading this thing all the way through, you wouldn't really need to do that. You would have a decent idea of what's going on because you already have the context in mind. But we're going to bring wane here down just so we have a better idea what's going on. Wane right there. But he came in order to hold a witness about source of light. That clears up the entire issue there, just going back and getting the context of verse number 7. All right, verse 9. We've got a verb. We've already done erat. We don't need to parse it again. We just write down what it means. We know that we need a singular subject. And we look at our next word. We've got lux. Lux is going to be nominative singular feminine. And since it is the first nominative this time, that's going to make it most likely the subject, and there will probably be another nominative or prepositional phrase. As we look ahead, we see were. It's got our a ending, which could be nominative or accusative plural neuter, or it could be nominative singular feminine. So this word is an adjective, so it's going to have to match the case, the number, and the gender of the noun it modifies. The only noun for it to modify is lux. It could modify lux because nominative singular feminine is an option. Nominative singular feminine is also an option here. Technically, it could be a substantive referring to something else, but that is extremely unlikely. Usually, where would appear as something else to clearly mark it as separate from lux. So this one, we're going to say, is also nominative singular feminine, and it is the predicate. And it means true. Light. Okay, light was true. Quai. Here we have a form of qui quod. I'm going to write that down here. Now, qui quod, the form quai could be nominative singular feminine, or it could be a myriad of other options in the neuter or just in the plural. Since we don't have anything neuter in this first clause for quai to refer to, that doesn't make any sense. So the only option left to us is something feminine, and quai best fits with the singular. So this one also must be nominative singular and feminine. Which. All right, which what? Here we have our verb at ot, which is going to be a third person and singular ending. And the tense of this verb is going to be, since we've got an alpha there, it could be subjunctive if this verb were third conjugation, but as far as I'm aware, it's not a third conjugation. So it's most likely going to be present and active of the first conjugation and indicative. And this one just means to enlighten. Just spelled, I'm probably going to get this wrong. So we got a singular third, I'm going to add that S there, which enlightens what? Now we need a direct object for the verb, the subject, true light. to act upon, as we look ahead, we've got omnem, but omnem is an adjective, so there's probably going to be a noun for it to modify. As we look ahead, we've got homonym. Homonym is a noun, and it matches, in the case, the number and the gender. These are both thirds, so we can't really tell the gender, but it's most likely going to be masculine. So I'm just going to write here accusative, singular, and masculine. Since we have plural of omnem, it's not going to mean all like we would normally want it to. In this case, it's probably going to mean every. Every man. Okay. Light was true, which enlightens every man. And now we can move on and finish the rest of this clause in the last bit of this verse. So we've got wanientem. It's got our accusative singular ending. It's going to be modifying homonym. That's masculine. And this is a participle. We've got wenio is the verb, weni, the stem. Ent changes it into a participle, and m is the case ending. So that's going to be present. Present is the only third declension participle in Latin, and it is active. There is no present passive participle. All right, and this would mean coming. And then prepositional phrase, in mundum. Here, in is taking the accusative, so plus ac, and mundum is singular and masculine. And it means, since we've got an accusative, this is showing an accusative of place into which. We've also got a verb or participle of motion, so that fits. Into. We do not have this use of in, which is to be expected because that one is pretty uncommon. All right. So then, from the beginning, we've got all of it done. We've got that one. Which one? John was not light, but he came in order to witness, or sorry, in order to hold witness about source of light. Light was true, which enlightens every man coming into world. So without articles, this sounds pretty weird. We had to bring in wane it up here based on the context of verse 7 in order to clear this one up. And since we have a participle here, technically there are a couple options for us to bring in to help figure out what's actually going on. Because just saying, which enlightens every man coming into the world, sounds kind of weird. So we could, in English, change this to a relative clause, which would help clear things up and help the reader understand a little bit better. We're not going to for our official, quote-unquote, translation, but for the sake of clarity right now, we will. So we would say, the light was true, which enlightens every man who comes into the world. And I believe what would probably be intending for us to understand there is who's born into this world, which is everybody. Okay, so that finishes off verse 8 and verse 9. Our next one, we're just going to take a look at verse 10, and then after that, we're going to switch to a new piece of paper and tackle probably verse 11 through 13, maybe 2 more videos than that. And then we're going to take a very long video, and I'll likely might even break it into 2 parts, where we compare this text to our Greek text. Well, I hope this was helpful and useful to your life, and I hope to see you in our next video. Have a good day.